Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Lee Pitts Live on Fox 4 here in South Florida. And for those who are seeing us around the country, we appreciate you catching us streaming online. We're so thrilled here to get a person who's a pillar in the state of Florida. He's a candidate for the State House District 26, which is Volusia County area. We'll get more details on that. His name is Percy Williamson. And without further ado, Percy Williams, welcome to Lee Pitts Live.
Lee Pitts, good to see you again. You're doing great things down here in South Florida, and you're moving, shaking. I'm very pleased to be on your show.
Well, I'm so pleased as well to have you on the show. It is an honor and a privilege to get a person of your background and your reputation here in the state to take a few minutes out with us here in Delray Beach. You are running for State House District 26. You've done a lot of fantastic things in your life that we'll get a chance to talk about. Now you put your hat in the political arena. Why is that?
Well, Lee, I retired for the second time. I've been through two very lucrative and serious careers. So in January, I retired from the city of Daytona Beach as the Director of Leisure Services after 14 years there. And of course, I retired from the banking industry after serving 25 years there. So with the public and private sector background and experience, man that's heavily involved in my community, it was a natural progression for me to move to state government and try to do something for my community.
Okay. Here in a conversation with Percy Williamson. Percy, when people vote for Percy Williamson, they're going to be getting a wide range of things. But let's find out about the early days of Percy Williamson. How did you first, how did you grow up and how did you arrive to the area?
Well, when I talk about my early years, I really can't talk about the early years unless I mention how I got to Volusia County and Daytona Beach. My great-grandfather was a sharecropper. My grandfather was a sharecropper. My father was a sharecropper. I was born in a small town called Whittier, North Carolina, which is in the western part of the state, maybe about 40 miles from Asheville. And quite naturally, my family was in the sharecropping business. When you sharecrop, you have large families, and the male members of the family at an early age go to the fields, which is what my father did. So after the third grade, he went to the fields.
Very similar to my father in Alabama at the time.
All right. So you know that it's hard work, it's difficult work. And so to my father's credit, one day he came home from the fields and his young wife, who had 6 children at that time, aged 3 months to 8 years old. And he came home one day and said to his wife that he wanted to change his destiny and the destiny of his children.
Wow.
So he gathered up his young family.
Which would be you in that group?
Myself and my 5 brothers and sisters, put us on the Greyhound bus and moved us to Daytona Beach, Florida. Didn't know anybody there, didn't have any job, didn't have anywhere to stay, didn't have any connection, but he had heard that there was lucrative work there that he could have, and it was a place that he felt like he can change his destiny. And because of my father, who, not an educated man, but a man of faith, decided that he was going to change his destiny and the destiny of his children. And I'm here to tell you today, he did exactly that.
And looking back at it, it looks like he did a great thing, because to have you essentially are a native son. When you moved into Daytona, how old were you at the time?
3 years old. It was in 1958.
Right. So for all practical purposes, you're a native son, and he brought you to a place that you would eventually carve your teeth and make a serious impact, which we will continue. We will cover in the conversation with Percy Williamson. You talked about your family briefly, but tell us about the dynamics there.
Well, coming from a large family, I had 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and coming from a large family, I don't know about you, and I don't know how many brothers and sisters you got.
Get a word in.
You can't get a word in. It's highly competitive. You compete for everything: position at the dinner table, position with mom and dad, everything. And so the competitive nature of myself came from competing with my brothers and sisters.
How did you fall in that, though? Because me, I fell like next to the last, so I was just like, yeah, you're nobody. Yeah.
Well, we have a lot in common because I was child number 5
okay.
of 6. and the number 3 boy in the family.
And
so that means I got over my
I'm number 6 of 7.
Okay, well, and so that meant I got the hand me down. Okay, so you basically waited your turn, and your older brothers didn't want you hanging around because mom wanted them to babysit you.
What did that experience do to you looking back? Having to wait your turn, having to earn your own way, having to build your own rep, having to establish yourself. What did that do to you as a person that now benefits you in life?
It taught me, Lee, to pay attention, okay? I paid attention to what my brothers did. I paid attention to how my brothers handled situations. You had to negotiate everything, okay? And so with that, my brothers did certain things that I agreed with. They did some things I didn't agree with, and so I can't make all the mistakes myself. So I looked at the things that my brothers did to try to avoid those pitfalls that they fell into.
I see.
So when you are several people down the line, it's always wise to keep your eyes open, pay attention, and get that wisdom just by paying attention.
And you got a chance to be educated in the public school system. I know people in the Daytona area will certainly are proud of you, and they certainly want you to call the name of the schools you went to. So let's go through that process.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because my mother, who only had a 6th grade education, my father with a 3rd grade education, my mother with a 6th grade education, said to us early on, education is the great equalizer. Okay. Didn't understand what all that meant, but she was adamant about being able to get a good education. If you want to change your destiny, you want to level the playing field, get a good education. And I'm happy and pleased to say that my educational years in the public school system set the foundation for all the things that I did up until this point.
What school did you attend?
Well, that's the other part. I'm one of those folks. I was on the 2nd tier of integration. So my first 7 years was in all black schools. And to me, I'll tell anybody, the foundation that I got from those teachers who lived in our community, I got the best possible education I can possibly get because those teachers who are our neighbors had the green light to discipline you if you got out of line. And they wouldn't just move you along if you wasn't getting it. You had to get it or you couldn't move along.
And they knew what the future held for you, and they were passionate about making sure you had opportunity.
Absolutely. For all those kids that they thought all kids had the potential to do great things, but they made sure that we were prepared for whatever came after we left there.
Slightly moving out of a segregated world in that way, yes. In the South.
Yes.
The work ethic. I know you got a great work ethic. Did that develop from your childhood?
It did. It did. My parents worked extremely hard. And I'll say right up front that about 5 years after we got to Daytona Beach, my mother and father divorced. So that meant that my mother, with a 6th grade education, was responsible for 6 children. And I can't tell you how wise and genius she was. I mean, she was probably the best banker and the best accountant I've ever seen because she's making minimum wage and she was feeding, clothing, and taking care of the social concerns of 6 children. Can you imagine that? On a minimum wage job.
What is spirituality in your family fit? Was it you guys are religious?
My mother always wanted us to be balanced and have a sense of purpose. And in order to do that, we knew that where we had come from, and then we knew that there was going to be struggles going forward. And so we had to have hope and something to believe in. And so she always made certain that we got a healthy dose of grace and religious experience.
And you carry those values and character with you to this day?
To this day.
The high school, I think early on we were talking, you were mostly probably talking about middle school and elementary school. Tell us about high school days.
High school days, that's the other interesting part. During integration, they basically wanted to have forced integration based on busing. And so my 7th grade year was spent at the all-black middle school. And then I went to an integrated school in 8th grade on the mainland side of the city, and then from there I went to the eastern beach side of the city in my 9th grade year. So in my middle school years, I went to 3 different middle schools, getting to high school, and then of course high school I went on to Seabreeze High School, which is on the beach side. And I'll never forget that we had 2 buses that came from the core city of Daytona Beach over to the beach side. In my graduating class, we had 754 graduates.
Wow.
In my graduating class, 35 African Americans.
Wow.
So you can imagine the differences in culture that we dealt with a small black population and a large majority population.
What did that do for you in terms of your ability to adapt to a wide range of cultures, particularly being in a minority situation, but still maintaining your self-esteem and knowing that you got opportunities to make something of yourself?
Well, once again, my mother said that education was a great equalizer. My elementary school teachers gave me a tremendous foundation, and a lot of the teachers, once I got to middle school and high school, was surprised at how far advanced we were, because we weren't allowed to skip anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other part of it was that those brothers and sisters that you had to negotiate with on a daily basis was a good stead for me, because when I got to high school and I had to negotiate with people different from me, negotiations is negotiations.
In general, how would you describe your performance in school? A, B, C type student? How would you describe it?
I was always a B student.
Okay.
And I was a B student because not only what my mother said, but also because I had a little talent back in those days, and I was a basketball player.
Right.
And I couldn't play basketball, which was something I had a passion for and loved, if I didn't get good grades. And so if I wanted to play basketball, which I love, then I had to get good grades.
Yeah, but we're downplaying the basketball piece because you were a standout basketball player. I'm sure we'll get into that in your college days in another segment of the conversation with you. But you were a standout basketball player. I've read things about you. You were an exceptional. And the interesting thing about you as a basketball player in school, you hit your books, but along the way, you were a leader. You were the point guard. That's
Yes.
basically what people who don't understand basketball. It's like the quarterback of the team. You're the Steph Curry. You're the Kyrie. You're the Chris Paul of the team. And you got into the whole concept of valuing making assists.
Right.
Making assists and making other people look good. How did that play into your life right now?
Well, it's all about collaboration, networking, and teamwork.
That's right.
You could do a lot of things if you get a group of talented people on the same page, and you value each and every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of them have to play a role. Everybody can't be the superstar, but if you're going to be successful as a team, everybody has to know their role, and they have to stick to it and play their role, and get recognized for the role that they play.
Did you have any idea at that time, moving around in the high school setting, you got these, you're a small basketball player, but you're quick, you got a great jump shot and all these things, and you know how scouts look for height and certain parameters. But did you have any idea at that time that where you were going to go, whether it was going to your pursuits would eventually be in the athletic world, or whether you would be doing something else with your life, which you eventually became a banker and all these other things? But at that time, what were you thinking?
Well, at that time, my passion 100% was basketball.
Okay.
And the education part of it was something that allowed me to be passionate about basketball. But a wonderful thing happened on the way to maturing is when basketball, I started out, was up here. Education was down here. Mm-hmm. It was just a means to get me to be able to do the thing I loved the most. But as time went on, the basketball passion moved down here, and the education passion moved up here. And so that turn in life is one of the things that I value most, because it prepared me for the wonderful future that I had as it moved along.
Final question before we go to your college days.
Yeah.
If I were to go and talk to somebody in your neighborhood who went to high school with you, a random person who knew you though, I said, hey, tell me who is Percy Williams? What was he like? What would they say at that time? Well,
the first thing that they will probably say is he's probably the toughest little guy that they've ever met. And
Okay.
being small in stature, you're a natural target to get pushed around. But see, they didn't know that I had 5 other brothers and sisters who just used to beat me up and toughen me up, and so I didn't back down on anybody. So they basically would have said to you, "Don't mess with that brother," because
Really?
Yeah, because he's a rough guy.
Okay, all right. And in terms of your brain, they would say what?
Well, they were very confused because I didn't really hang with one group or the other. I didn't hang with the jocks, didn't hang with the popular people. hang with the hippies. I wanted to be able to interact with all groups of people, and I think that decision early on is one of the things that helped me later in life to be able to deal with a certain type of people, all types of people, and understand that we're all the same. We just simply have to understand that they have a personality of their own, and we all have our own pluses and minuses.
Wow, you're a role model now. You grew up in the inner city for all practical purposes. And we know about some of the pitfalls in the inner city, crime, violence, drugs, and those types of things.
Right.
How did you, your family, how did you avoid those?
Well, first and foremost, my mother, who basically said that there are certain things that are going to be offered up to you, and you, as a leader, are going to have to be able to not buckle to peer pressure and go along with something that you know that you shouldn't go along with. That's the first thing. Secondly, being an athlete and knowing that this thing that I love so much, basketball, would be taken away from me if I did something crazy, it steered me away from the drugs, the violence, the crime, because, look, I knew that if I got sidetracked, that was going to be taken away, and I didn't want that to be taken away.
And you had to have a strong disposition and discipline to enforce those types of things amongst your peers.
Absolutely, because you don't believe, or you wouldn't believe, how difficult it is to say no. When your friends are saying do this or that, you can't say no.
And I think it's even harder for a male. I can't speak for a female, but it's just so much coming at you when you're growing up in the inner city.
Right.
This is I know you guys are riveted to this, and I'm loving every bit of it. We're going to be back with more conversation with the candidate for the State House for the state of Florida. That'll be Percy Williamson. For District 26, a conversation with Percy Williamson. When we come back, we'll talk those college days.